Welcome back to WizNugs. Today we've got a request from a viewer to talk about repairing family relationships.
For me, I want to talk a little bit about something that's similar to this subject. And about the age of 12, I found out who my biological father was. And I was very excited, and I had hoped to create this father-son relationship, which I did not get from my stepfather. So I actively pursued him for 6 years, going over to his house and spending time with him, going to his job, whatever event I could go to get to spend time with him. After 6 years of this, finally realizing that it wasn't something he really was ever interested in, and I wasn't going to be able to make that relationship happen under those current circumstances that were present at that time. So I had to make the decision of, well, do I want to let this affect me and make these decisions of I'm going to go down a slippery slope of negativity, or am I going to take the opportunity to define myself and be comfortable with who I am and decide that I'm going to be the person that I want to be regardless of the fact that I was not going to have that kind of relationship with him.
So I think in this kind of topic, we really need to focus on the things that we can control.
Right.
Because it's really, really easy to put our self-worth, to put our even our sense of self onto how the relationship itself is doing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is even something that can happen in within a marriage, for example, of, well, if the other person is acting a certain way, then that means something about me.
Right.
And so the key really has to be starting with inside and working on yourself and deciding, like you said, in the case of your relationship with your father, working out who are you and what are you going to do?
So I was fortunate enough in my youth, even before 12, not to have a lot of friends. And you think, well, how was that fortunate?
Right.
Well, the reason being, as I say, the reason I was fortunate is because it had taught me that I'm only going to have people who want to be my friend who truly thought I was, the qualities that I had was friend worthy, at least to them. And so I learned at an earlier age that I'm never going to be able to make people like me. I'm never going to make friends by pretending to be something that I'm not. So at that age, I only had one friend, right? I had no friends up until I was in 6th grade. And then after 6th grade, he moved away. And in 7th grade, I had 2 friends. And those were my 2 friends in junior high, right? And then when I got to high school, I started having a few more friends. Not a lot, but some. But I had learned at that early age that I'm never going to be able to make people like me for who I am, but I'm still going to be who I am. And if they like me, awesome. And if they don't, there's nothing I can do about it. So when it came to my dad, even though I tried for much longer to establish this relationship, never once did I try to be something that I thought he wanted me to be. I'm like, this is who I am. This is my interests. And a lot of those people on that side of the family are like, you're weird. You're different, right? Because I was kind of a nerd. Still kind of a nerd. But I was, into computers, and I was into video games. I was into comic books. And none of those people on that side of the family even dealt with that. It was more that Hispanic, macho culture where you need to be into guitars and girls and start drinking, when you get a beer here and get a beer there kind of a thing, even at that young age. And that was just not something that attracted me. So I was fortunate enough to fall into the mindset of I need to change who I am in order to get him to like me.
Yeah. So I think that part of it's really, really perfect. And I think universalizable. That's probably a word.
I'm going to say it is. You're better about it than I am.
Well, that it has universal application, maybe we'll say. That in knowing who you are and having a solid sense of self, you can go into a relationship situation and you can have a firm sense of boundaries, and a sense of your values as well. So you know who you are and what you want and what you're willing to take and accept in terms of behavior from others, what you're willing to give of yourself. So if you get into one of these situations and it does end up being completely one-sided, where you got to do all of the work to show up, you got to do everything to invite, you got to do everything to be at the other person's stuff all the time, right, and they never come to your stuff, you have to be willing to decide whether that's for you.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's one of the hardest things to accept is that we can't impact other people's behavior beyond modeling what we think the proper behavior is.
Right.
And inviting them to do something that you think is worthwhile, whether that's a behavior modification or inviting them specifically like to an event.
Right. And then also, conversely, if you feel like you want to be part of this person's life, you do go to the things that they have interest in, right? If it's they like to fish, or they like to go hunting, or they like, to play certain sports, or they like to, go to certain events, invite yourself to go to that. Maybe it's not necessarily your cup of tea, but if you get to be able to go and partake in something that that they enjoy, they're going to associate you and correlate you to a good time or a pleasant experience, and then you'll be able to gain that. Now, I say only do that to a point.
Right, because you're not going to be able to, like, if you show up at every single thing that they're at and you're just basically stalking them and there's no reciprocation going on,
right,
that doesn't necessarily mean that you're building a relationship.
Right.
But I think showing interest in someone else's interests, that matters in a relationship.
Yeah, especially if you are being earnest and honest about what you're trying to develop, right? So it's going to take work. And like you said, I wish we could control people to a point. But the reality is, we're not going to be able to. And honestly, you wouldn't want to. It's enough to be able to try to control ourselves.
Sure.
Much less worrying about myself and then the actions or behaviors of others.
And I think that brings to kind of the next point, which is to focus on what your goal in the situation is.
Right.
If your goal is to strengthen a relationship, you recognize that takes time. You recognize that you don't necessarily know what strengthen is going to look like.
Sure.
In the end.
And for every individual relationship, it's going to be different. There's going to be barriers and parameters and things that each individual person in this relationship is going to accept or not accept. And there's going to be things that you might wish that they would do or partake in, and they may not be able to or be unwilling to. And then you have to decide of your own, is that in an acceptable parameter for you, right? Don't base it off the other person. You have to base it on yourself.
Right. And the time frame as well is something I think is worth talking about.
Yes.
Because it's really easy to start on a project and to expect that overnight you're going to see a certain level of results.
Right.
So as social creatures, we have a tendency to compare our situation to the situation of people around us who we deem as successful.
Right.
And we compare where we're at, feeling low or middle, and we look at them and they're high, and we're like, why am I not there? How do I get there?
And I think what we do is we have this bad tendency of, well, this is where they're at. Why am I not there? Well, they may have been started way down here.
Yep.
And now you're comparing yourself to where they're at currently, not from where they started from.
Comparing your beginning to their end.
Oh, yeah. Or even middle.
Sure. If you have a goal in mind, you have something to work toward. Remember to be patient with it.
Yeah.
Remember that you're going to do your best to make something happen. Now, that also kind of leads into the when we tie these two things together about knowing who you are and your boundaries, knowing that you can control only your side of things.
Right.
That brings you to being patient and knowing what your goal is. Kind of leads us into the third major topic here, which is invite.
Yeah. And communicate to an extent.
Absolutely. Right. Well, yeah. Communicate. When you're communicating, you're inviting to things that are important to you. You could be inviting them to have a relationship with you. Maybe you want to come out and just say 100% bluntly, I feel like we don't have a good relationship. I'd like to work on that.
And try not to point blame. Even if you feel like it's a completely one-sided fault why this relationship is currently at its current status. Most of us, if not all of us, don't like to be I'm the person's at fault, I'm the bad guy, right? And we definitely don't want to be told that we're the bad guy.
And if we feel attacked in the slightest, whether we are or aren't, it's really easy to get defensive. And then the walls go up.
Yep. And if
you're inviting somebody to have a stronger relationship, you don't want the walls up. You want the walls down.
Right. So what I would suggest is to say, this is how I feel about this current relationship. I would like it to be different. So from this point forward, I would like to be able to work on that. I'm going to invite you to as many things that hopefully that you can make it to. And if some things you can't make it to, that's fine. And I want to try to invite myself as much as I can to make it into your events and whatever they are and be part of your life. And hopefully you can manage your expectations and realize that even if they are a family member and it's something of a father, son, mother, daughter, or, vice versa.
Or maybe just an estranged sibling, or a family friend that you haven't seen in a long time. If you're trying to have that relationship, and you got to start somewhere.
So even if it's that kind of a relationship, that you have to understand that there are going to be limitations because they still have their own personal life to live and they still have their own personal interests. And that's the reality of it. The reality of it is people are going to continue to live their life the way that they think they need to live their life. We would like to think that we are included in those decisions. But again, that's not something that we can control.
That reminds me a little bit of watching my kids in school. They have the same group of friends year over year because that's just the way that their school operates. They're in the same classroom with the same kids year after year after year, more or less. There's a few that move in and out. But, I think my son's probably had the same best friend for the last 3, 4, or 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's not my experience. Yeah. My experience in elementary school was there were 3 or 4 classrooms for each given grade. And so the school somehow would just decide who was going to be in classes together. And if I wasn't in a class with my best friend, I had to make other friends because they were, I'd see them at recess and lunch and stuff, and we'd still hang out. But, proximity plays a large part in relationships.
Right.
So if we're trying to have a relationship with an estranged family member, to build that back up, part of that's going to be time together. Yeah. And if that time together is, hey, you watching the big game on Sunday? Hey, mind if I come over? Or do you want to come over to my place?
Hey, or I'm going to have a big event at my house. It's a birthday party for a friend of mine, and their parents are coming. I would really love it if you could make it too.
Yeah,
because I'd love for them to be able to meet you.
It's about spending the time together, and if it can be quality time, quantity time, whatever it is, you got to get the minutes in.
Right, and not to try to be negative here. I'm not trying to be black pill. However, it's a possibility that even with your best efforts, that you cannot make this relationship grow from where its current standpoint. And so, like in my case, like I mentioned at the beginning, it wasn't something that lack of effort. It wasn't going to happen. The sad part is it never happened. I got older. Every once in a while I'd see him and it would be the same old song and dance from him about why he couldn't participate in my life. He wouldn't show up for my events, so on and so forth. But like, again, I already had made up my mind that that's okay, right? I didn't like it, but I accepted it.
Which is another super cool technique. Really hard to learn. Pretty hard to explain.
Yes.
So I'll do my best here.
No, go for it.
But there's this concept in psychology known as radical acceptance. And my basic understanding of it is recognizing that something is a certain way. Recognizing that you can't affect that thing. You don't have to like it. You don't have to want it to be that way. You can wish up one side, down the other that it could change or that you had the power to will it somehow.
Yeah.
But once you recognize that there's nothing that you can do to change it, at a certain point, you have to start just accept that it is. Accept that it's a thing that you can't change and get on with it.
Yep.
Whatever getting on with it means in that situation.
And if you realize it's something you can't change, then you have the recognition that it's not a part of you. Because you can change you. You can change aspects of you if you so desire. But if something is so far from you that you have no effect on it whatsoever, then it has nothing to do with you. And that's the reality of it. And for some people, it's hard. And I'm not going to say I did it with ease. But it was something I had to tell myself. It's like, it is what it is. Maybe some point in time, they will decide they want to change and they want to have a relationship. And I will allow for that to happen. I didn't completely write him off. I was like, I'll allow for it to happen if he so chooses to follow up with that and want to have a relationship. But sadly, it never happened. And then in his early 60s, he ended up passing away from, I really don't know what, because again, the communication and the relationship that we had was so far apart that it wasn't just something that was, I was unbeknownst to me what the actual thing was, right? I assume it was with diabetes, but again, that's an assumption. But my case isn't the case for everybody. And there is always a possibility that any relationship can be salvageable as long as you're willing to put in the effort and the other person is also willing to have some kind of leeway and some kind of meaning in the middle, right?
Well, I think that brings us to kind of the culmination of the idea of having boundaries.
Yes.
That in this situation, you know what your goal is, you know what your boundaries are, what kind of behaviors you're willing to accept and not. I mean, I'm just imagining if this person that you're trying to have a relationship with, for example, has a drug problem, you don't need to be an enabler,
right,
and go get them drugs or whatever. Like that's not a healthy relationship. So building a relationship with someone who's in that kind of situation, I'm afraid I don't have any advice for that.
Yeah. And there's going to be situations, not for everybody, but there's going to be for some people. The situation is going to be kind of in that dire straits, if you would, where they're not necessarily in the best situation that you can actually build up a meaningful, lasting relationship with. And there needs to be some recognition with that. If you can be part of the solution, awesome, great.
And if you feel like just being there, just being present for a time,
yep, to
observe, record, and soak up some of that presence with that person, maybe that's what you needed. It's hard to speak to these things, but if you know that you've put in the effort and you've done what you can do, there may come a time where you have to decide to be comfortable with the way things end up. The way things shake out is it.
Yeah. So in summation, the first and most important thing is love yourself. Accept who you are. Accept what you can change. If you feel internally that you want to be a different person and you feel that you can be better, go for it. But don't let outside forces decide that for you. And definitely don't go changing who you are to try to obtain someone else's love or affection or attention. Because in the end, you won't get that.
And there may be cultural or familial expectations that you need to decide if those are going to fit within your boundaries.
And hopefully through communication and understanding, you and the person that you're trying to rebuild this relationship with will be able to do just that and continue to grow and as your love grows. But also be prepared just in case. Be willing to accept that things are what they are and you may not be able to change that relationship. So we want to thank you for joining us on this episode of WizNugs, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us today on WizNugs. If you liked what you heard, spread the word. For more information, head over to mywiznugs.com.